Hi. So this is week seven or eight, and we were still talking about poverty in class. And so this week at Boys and Girls Club, I decided to ask one of the students. I decided to go ahead and ask around if any of the students were comfortable talking about their economic situation, sort of, kinda. And I found one student who was willing to tell me about his economical situation, and I decided to kind of go piece by piece on what we've learned in class, to see how it lines up with what we're learning. So I asked him very general things. Like, I asked him, starting out, I was like, oh, if you had $100 million, what would you do? And he surprisingly gave the answer that we heard in class, where a lot of students in poverty or people in poverty tend to want to spend that money in a positive way. They don't invest it like some of the middle and upper class people would. So that kind of gave me a leeway into, okay, this kid comes from a poverty type situation. He comes from a low socioeconomical background. And so I decided to ask him a few questions and figure out kind of how his poverty came about. I learned that he comes from a family that went through a divorce, and the divorce was actually the thing that started the poverty. So it's situational in the fact that everything before the divorce was perfectly fine. They were living on two incomes, but when the divorce or the separation occurred, then he kind of slid back into or slid into a lower social class. He said he came from basically what sounded like a middle class background. They had a lot. They didn't have like as much, but they had a lot. And now he doesn't have so much. He lives primarily with his father. And I asked him about that. And he told me that his dad had to pick up. At one point, he had to do two jobs. Now he just has to do one, but he has to work some amount of overtime to just keep on par above, I'm assuming, the poverty line, which is about $23,000 a year. And he said it wasn't like that before. And so I asked him kind of some questions about, well, does your school do anything for you? Do teachers know that you come from this situation? He said that the teachers seem to know, like they know, but they don't treat him really any differently. I asked him, you know, are you in Boys and Girls Club through like a scholarship? Do you know if you get to be here for like a discounted price or free, or like if your meals are paid for? And he had no real knowledge of that. I would assume that a school district in Kansas, like the school district I went to in Blue Valley, would offer things like free and reduced meal plans for students in low socioeconomical situations, which would be a great form of aid. He said that he doesn't really notice having to go day to day without really anything. He said, occasionally, the internet gets shut off or something like that, and he can't play video games, but he's not experiencing the worst kind of poverty. He is experiencing a form of poverty. And then I asked him kind of, how do the other students react to you? Do they know? Do they treat you differently? He said they know. Some of them do know. Some of them have assumed because of how he comes into school. He doesn't always have the newest designer stuff. He doesn't have a cell phone. He doesn't have an iPhone 6 Plus or whatever. He doesn't have all the up-to-date electronics. So they know in that regard. And then I asked him if they treated him any differently due to it. He said he didn't notice any different kind of treatment. He told me he always kind of just doesn't really have that many friends in general. But he doesn't think that the poverty or the situational poverty that's going on has had any effect on whether people talk to him or not. And I asked him kind of some of the other things that led into his situational poverty. He said ever since the divorce, there was one incident where his father lost one of the part-time jobs, or one of the jobs that he was working, two jobs at one time, and that kind of slid him back. He was a little bit more advanced, but he slid back a little bit further into situational poverty. And so, as far as school organizations or community resources, he doesn't seem to think that he needs them. That would probably be something his father would know. But that's what I noticed this week at Boys and Girls Club.